Welcome to Retrospective Cinema, a podcast wherein we'll endeavor week after week to see the full filmographies of chosen directors. We'll interpret, critique, and discuss. I am your co-host, Annie Morell.
And I'm your other co-host, Ryan Saylor. This week, we dive further into Céline Sciamma's filmography with her sophomore effort, Tomboy. Here's a clip.
Oui, mais mon préféré, c'est Michael. C'est un copain, alors il a joué avec moi, il m'a porté sur son dos, et maintenant c'est un copain à moi.
Again, that was from Tomboy. Before we get into that, we actually do have, for the first time in quite a while, I feel like, a supplemental work. Céline Sciamma, between her first film and this film, directed a short called Pauline. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'll go ahead with Tomboy. Noting now we are a full spoiler podcast, so if you aren't into that, you can click away. But if you are into that, I hope you enjoy our discussion. I'm really excited for this week. I think this is the kind of film that makes me say, wow, I'm really glad we had this idea for a podcast.
Yeah. Our first moment like that since Morven Caller way back in episode 2. You know, obviously PTA, we were not surprised that everything was quality. But diving into Pauline, I think this is an excellent companion piece to Tomboy, which will, maybe makes more sense once we talk about Tomboy. But what did you think of this overall? It's very short, about 8 minutes.
Yeah, so I think it's very effective. I want to see the sister pieces. This was part of a larger project. Assuming we watched the same cut of it, it started with an introduction of sorts that said 1 of 5 from films against homophobia, something like that. Anyway, so it wasn't made in isolation, but I didn't get to see anything else. Essentially, the whole short, you get this voiceover narration that starts telling this young woman's story about, growing up, realizing her sexuality, and the experiences, and as the camera pans, she's laying on her side, so it pans left across her body, you realize this isn't a voiceover. This is actually probably the titular Pauline telling you, the viewer, her story. And it goes through about the runtime, about 7 minutes of this story, and there's lots of downs, not many ups, but it ends on this up note where she has finally found acceptance, and her partner leans into frame, and they hug and laugh, and the film ends. And I liked it. I thought it was effective for what it was trying to do. I think near objectively, there's not many choices made, I guess, is how I would word it. And that's fine. It's not to the film's detriment necessarily, but I think there is a world where this may have given me a little more to talk about, but I think it absolutely does what it sets out to do. And I think immediately you do get to see Céline Sciamma's signature style, which I don't think we saw as much in her last film, and very much is in this short and then in Tomboy, which is this more intimate camera, lots of natural lighting, very very vulnerable feeling, I think is how I would word it. And yes, I was glad to see that develop here, as I felt a little disappointed to not see it last week when I had expected it. So anyway, that was probably more than you asked for, but what'd you get out of this?
Yeah, I wrote down intimate. That was my first little note. It's, we start out with some establishing shots of the room that she's in, and then it really is almost this confessional. It feels like you're laying there with her, and she's talking to you while laying on her side, telling you this really tumultuous, awful childhood that she's been through thus far. And yeah, I loved, it felt, I think I'm going to use this word a lot for Céline Sciamma. It felt very honest, and I liked that it's the reality of a lot of young gay people to struggle with their identity, struggle with their families and peers accepting them. And I also think that often a complaint in the modern day is that it becomes, like, telling these stories becomes trauma porn. And what I appreciated about this was it was very much, Pauline's story. It felt real and honest, but it ended in ultimately someone accepting her and loving her for who she is. When we get a very brief little cameo from Adele Hanel,
Yeah.
who was in Water Lilies. And I'm assuming at this point is still Céline Sciamma's partner at this point in time. Would be my guess, since she's in the movie. Yeah, and this was not written by Céline Sciamma, I think is the other notable thing. Daphne Charbonneau, high school French, flexing its muscles throughout this series for me. Daphne, perhaps. I liked the line, "The worst part is I didn't even hate them," which
Yeah.
I feel like is such a, it's a common thing for people whose families mistreat them. It's like they're still your family. You generally don't hate them, even if they hate you. So, yeah.
As we head toward Tomboy, I guess I do want to get a few things out of the way. I don't even know if these are disclaimers or what to call them, but I think there's just a few things worth saying. One is that there is no way to discuss this film and not talk about some potentially triggering material, depending on your background. This is definitely going to go into, I mean, by the end of this film, it gets to be a relatively difficult, but like you said, honest discussion on perception around gender non-conforming people, at least, and then your perception can adjust from there. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that. Additionally, because the film has a few vague elements that I think are to its benefit, we will talk about that, there's no perfect way to refer to the genders of these characters or their names. So if at any time, we're referring to a character in a way that you think is, misrepresentation, it's not intentional. It's just it is a little difficult to navigate some of the synopsis of this film and be as respectful as I would love to be,
Yeah. I would add to that, you're mainly, I assume, talking about our main character, who does go by two different names throughout the film. And I think that for me personally, my interpretation of what the film is saying means that there isn't a right answer as to how to refer to this main character.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that, because I'm excited to talk about it.
And I agree with you. I think I want to make sure that we say that up front in case, someone doesn't feel that way, because then it could come off like we're being disrespectful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a fair like, I'm not saying that my interpretation is the only one, but in my view, I do think that there's not a clear answer as to this main character's pronouns or even name.
Sure.
Tomboy. We can maybe call them Tomboy.
Well, even that. We can start with the title. I thought that was interesting. That is the title. That is the title across languages. This isn't like last week where the French and English titles are rather different. This is the title. I thought it was a particularly interesting title in that our lead never refers to themselves that way, as far as I remember, at least.
I think you're correct. Yeah, that sounds right. Our lead never refers. Well, our lead refers to themselves as Mikkel, I think, is the only, and then the end, their given name. But yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, I thought it was interesting because the film almost invites you to perceive the progression of the lead a different way from the title. But I mean, our character is dealing with adults' perceptions. Like, she feels like her mother accepts her because it's not acknowledged, and then once it is, it becomes clear that her mom is not okay with this at all. But when she views her daughter as a tomboy, it's safe. But when suddenly he might be a boy, well, then it's no longer safe. So I think that title is interesting. It's almost an external label to start us off.
Yeah, I think it flags pretty immediately for the viewer the fact that this character is assigned female at birth, AFAB for those inclined to abbreviations. And at the same time, I don't know, even though I was, fairly certain I understood who this character was. I was very much we as an audience start out with not a clear establishment of the main character's gender. The name that their parents gave them is Lore, and that is how they're referred to whenever they are in their house with the parents, who, to be honest, I thought were divorced at first, but then it wasn't that. So that was a weird dynamic.
Mhm.
And maybe we can get into their relationship a little bit more, even though it's not at the forefront at any real point. But yeah, which I liked that. I liked that it wasn't an immediate establishment of like, this is a girl or this is a boy. It was very much like, well, this is a kid,
Yeah.
being a kid and dressed in a masculine way. Very much a lot of like muscle tees and like cargo shorts. And very young. They're about 10 years old. So, very much in a prepubescent stage, and that's kids kind of all look the same, like other than like hair and hair length and the way they dress. Like at that age and younger, like kids look the same.
Mhm.
And it's society that and societal norms that put these gender presentations on them, which is so interesting, and that's such a like that concept is often like played for comedy in media too, where it's like, yeah, it's from The Office. It's like an earlier episode, and there's an infant wearing a pink bow, and one of the characters says like, "Oh my gosh, like she's so pretty," or something like that, and the mom is like, "He's a boy," and then she goes, "Well, the pink bow, that's his favorite color." And so it's like rampant through society. That's the first clue that we get that Lore is probably a girl, or at least AFAB, is when Lore is taking a bath with their sister, Jean, the younger sister. And so you kind of think like, yeah, maybe, maybe they're kids, they're just young enough to take a bath no matter the gender, but that was an early clue for me.
Yeah. Their relationship was
Oh,
adorable. I don't know that I mean, at the very least, this is in the running for like best siblings on film ever.
mhm.
I was trying to think of the last time I was as moved as the scene when Jean is saying that Mikkel gave her a piggyback ride, and I think it goes all the way back to Ingmar Bergman's Fanny and Alexander when they're walking away from the mansion and just yelling cuss words to try to feel a little better about themselves. Just the sheer amount of safety in the siblings in this movie was something I was very happy to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the child acting in general and the directing of the children is some of the best I've ever seen. And yeah, especially their relationship. I loved at one point Lore tells Jean like, "Oh, I'm going to be back at this time." And Jean's like, "Make me a watch so that I know." And Lore starts to like draw a little watch on her wrist, and I was so charmed by the chemistry between these two little kids. And yeah, I appreciated the contrast because we have such unsupportive parents. I appreciated the contrast within the family of Jean clearly, initially reacting like, "Oh, I'm going to tell mom that you're doing this, that you're pretending to be a boy." But then, really what she wants is to just be included in playing with the neighborhood kids. And so then it is pretty clear that after that, she clues into like, oh yeah, like Laura feels safe as Mikkel, and just goes along with it, and even like talks about, as you were saying, like at the dinner table, like, oh yeah, I have this like new friend named Mikkel who's like awesome, and it's so heartwarming, so sweet, and it's a nice counterpoint to the parents' reaction, and especially the mother's reaction to Mikkel, because it could just be that. It could be that easy, you know. It doesn't have to be this terrible, terrible reaction that the mother has.
Yeah.
I can't even. That's it. Oh man, this movie is so great, but it is deeply upsetting. near the end.
Sure. I won't, yeah,
We'll get there.
dive into the last quarter for sure. But I guess it is worth just briefly going through how this film comes to be. So our family moves around a lot before the film starts, is what we're told. And so they move to this new city in summer. And so Lore, who is at the very least gender nonconforming, decides to either, depending on your interpretation, explore themselves, or embrace their true identity, or just have a little game. Anyway, and introduces themselves as Mikkel, as a boy, to every other fourth grader they meet. And we see just how, like you were saying, it really is just our labels that makes it like, oh, this is this type of child, because once Mikkel is Mikkel, you can't unsee that is a boy with all of the other boys. He fits right in. It's great.
Just briefly, I want to interject and maybe ask you, I took it to be initially he's mistaken for a boy, and then he just kind of runs with it and takes it as an opportunity.
Oh, okay.
Which I think that is kind of an important development, because if this family moves around all the time and Mikkel / Lore gets to make all these new introductions all the time, like, to me, why are we watching this movie, like this moment in this child's life? It's because it's the first time this has happened. And I think it gave them an invitation, like someone mistaking them for a boy gave them an invitation to do that exploration, like gave them the idea maybe of like, yeah, why couldn't I be a boy? Like, let's try it. Then the stakes are much higher than like, oh, if they've done this before, which I think it's pretty clear from the parents' reaction that they have not, then yeah, I think the stakes are very different.
So something we've been alluding to a little bit that I really do want to hear what you think, and I think we're on the same page, but I'm not sure, is that the film isn't definitively read one way. There's definitely a reading that this is a trans youth. There's a reading that this is a gender non-conforming person, or genderqueer, or just a child exploring, and maybe they ultimately are just cisgendered, heterosexual, what have you. I'm curious to hear maybe what you lean toward, and then even since there isn't that definitive choice, if you believe that to be a strength or weakness of the film, and why Céline Sciamma chose that at all.
I think there is not a definitive answer as to the gender of our main character, or gender identity of our main character, and I think it's to the script's credit that there isn't, because I think that's not the point. The point of it is clearly not. I think we get a lot of each of those answers, right? Like, I think we get he is a trans boy when he makes a penis out of Play-Doh to stuff his swimsuit with.
Mm-hmm.
I think, obviously, like the way that they dress and cut their hair and all of that is probably leans either gender nonconforming or trans boy. But I think, to me, the ultimate message of the film is not like this child is trans, or is this gender presentation, or is this sexual identity, and it sucks that their parents didn't recognize that. I think it's that it sucks that their parents didn't allow them to explore that, didn't give them the opportunity that for the rest of the summer, prior to the parents finding out, they were able to take advantage of the opportunity of exploring their identity, period, and their sexuality and all of it. I think the message is that kids should be allowed to do that and not put in any box. And so, to me personally, the idea of definitively saying, oh, I think this child in this film is this or that, totally misses the message of the film. That's my short answer to that. What I feel that we are in agreement, but
yeah,
Hit me with
Yeah,
it.
we are. I think it is a strength that the film doesn't give that perfect answer. I besides everything you said, I like that someone watching this from a lot of different backgrounds could see themselves in it. I
Mm.
think if there is a core goal of film beyond art for art's sake, I think empathy is the big one. And yes, you can build empathy very easily, for a specific people group by doing a specific film. But I think there is a power here that it's not just, okay, you need to care about this specific situation. It's this kid could be a lot of things. And do you care no matter which one they are? And I found myself really struck by moments, that I'm a cisgendered heterosexual male, so pretty far removed from what I think the options are for this child, and yet there are moments where I really saw myself in this kid. And so I think there's an incredible level of craft and care and intentionality here that is really to the film's strength. And I can see it being, I always try to read negative reviews of things I like, I guess is the short of it, to see, what other people felt. And some people did feel that, why make this film appeal, was kind of the wording to people that it's not for. And I don't think that's what it is. I think it's having an honest discussion about gender norms, especially with kids, and then showing that, it really doesn't matter what your end result is as an adult. Like there's something in here that you've probably been through. So I thought it was neat.
I agree. Yeah, I appreciated the universality that comes from the fact that it isn't put into one box, and they aren't put into one box. And for me as a queer woman, like, not anything I personally experienced as a child. My own journey happened later, but like, I can still see something of myself. Actually, no, I'll take it back. I was talking briefly before we recorded about this movie. I was lauding it to a friend, and I talked about how the character dresses very androgynously, and is in these like tank tops and boy shorts. And I thought back to like when I was a child during the summer. During the school year, I would definitely wear like pretty feminine clothes by and large, but during the summer, all I would wear was like basic t-shirts, just like unisex t-shirts, and then just like shorts. And that's all I wore. And I probably looked pretty androgynous other than my long hair. And no one ever said any, my parents didn't go like, "Oh, you need to dress more like a girl." And that didn't result in me, becoming non-binary, or realizing that I was trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming or any of those things. But I was allowed to be, I and I got to where I am today, like, because I was allowed to be in those times. And so I see myself in this. And I think you're right. I think it's easy for most people to see something of themselves in this. And this the care that was taken in crafting this story. I'm deeply impressed now with her first two works being such difficult subject matter in both cases, and especially this for 2011, especially. Granted, it's French, so that's all different than, like, this would never have been made in the mainstream in the US in 2011. I think I also looked at a couple of negative reviews, and I think there are people who believe, well, do we want to talk about the ending right now?
Yeah, we can head that way. It's a significant part of the film for sure.
Yeah, I think there are people who interpret the ending, especially the very end, after this humiliation has happened at the hands of Mikkel / Laura's mother, where she's taken her child around and outed outed them to several new friends slash their girlfriend, Lisa, who we haven't talked about. After all of that, Lisa, who is kind of Mikkel's girlfriend, or they definitely have a romance, asks what their name is. And the film ends with Lore saying their name is Lore. And there were people who interpreted that as a terrible message, as like, oh, you're saying that this was all okay, that like, oh, Lisa and Laura are gonna be friends now. And I don't think I agree with that. I think it's very sad that, at this point, Laura has learned the lesson of like, I'm not gonna be able to get away with this. I'm not gonna be allowed to explore my gender, my identity in any ways. And so I just need to go with the one that my parents gave me. And I don't think it's condoning it by ending the film that way. I think it's leaving that message of like how sad that like they just don't get to explore anymore. Like that lesson learned, trauma trauma forever from that.
Yeah, I thought it was such an interesting reading. So essentially the opinion of seemed to be that it was the film, justifying it and saying that this is, how this person lives and that's good. And I mean, it's showing that is how they're going to live. But yeah, like you're saying, I don't think that means that the film is condoning it at all. It just it's
deeply tragic
sometimes
ending.
Sometimes that is, how the world goes, unfortunately. And yeah.
Just I think it's, I wrote down at one point, this is like watching a documentary on kids. And I think, some of that comes from just the really naturalistic acting and clearly the capturing of just kids acting like kids and improvising as themselves, essentially, especially some of the group scenes among the neighborhood children. But I think that it's also, if Lore / Mikkel had been allowed to continue to explore their identity, that's not the reality that most kids, especially when you consider the time period 2010s, that's not the experience that most kids have. So yeah, I think it leads into reality well by having that message, and I don't think it condones the behavior of their mother in any way.
Yeah.
So or the kids because we have some awful bullying once it gets spread around that Mikkel is a girl, and even just like straight up sexual assault.
Yeah.
As they like check Mikkel to see if she's really a girl. Awful stuff. And I don't think it's condoning that, but like, yeah, that's real. Kids are terrible to each other very often. And a group of children given any reason to, I don't know, find an other within their group, like they will grab hold of it. So and they were already like, Mikkel was already kind of an other, I think, by nature of being a new kid in town, but also Lisa even at one point says, you're not like the others. And it's true.
Yeah, we see that Mikkel's acceptance into the group comes from, Lisa the first time says, oh, I'm going to let you, there's context because they're playing this like game, but essentially she's going to let him win this game. And she says, so that they'll like you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is very sweet, but also that is so true to kids. Like, oh, Mikkel's good for my team, and now I want him on my team. And there's that proving yourself. So, yeah, I thought the film was very impressive in how much it understood the psyche of children, and yeah, how sweet and cruel they could be, at the with not necessarily intentionality between and either option.
Yeah, definitely. I want to point out briefly early on, as Mikkel is starting to ingratiate himself into this friend group, there's some sort of, I think they're playing Truth or Dare, and someone dares Mikkel and Lisa to switch gum. They're both chewing gum, and they switch gum. And I just want to point it out. wanted to point it out because there's something about like sapphic film and maybe just like queer film and like eating weird stuff and like tasting your crush's saliva on objects. In Water Lilies we had
Mm-hmm.
the garbage scene where she eats some of the apple core that her crush has eaten, and yeah, we get a little like very much fake ew from Mikkel once they have this gum in their mouth, and I love that. Like, that's disgusting. I would never do that. That's not me. But it was sweet and gross, and I love that weird mix of those two things. I think that's hard to pull off.
Sure.
I love the development of Mikkel and Lisa's. I think we talked about Mikkel and Jean's relationship, but Mikkel and Lisa's budding romance is so sweet and so childlike. There's very little music in this film, but there's a significant needle drop that leads into this dance scene between the two of them. That's so cute. It's just the two of them dancing, and then I think it's the same scene or maybe near after that where Lisa puts makeup on Mikkel and says, "You look great as a girl."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mikkel goes home as Lore, and their mom is thrilled that they're wearing makeup for the first time, and it's clear it clearly makes their mom so happy and clearly makes them so uncomfortable to be in makeup.
Right.
And it's such a it's their relationship with their mom is so sad because the mom clearly would rather have their child present correctly than be happy. It is the ultimate message, from a point of I think practicality and an effort to, in her eyes, make Lore's life easier.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. Was her justification, was how are you gonna pull this off once school starts? They're gonna figure it out. Like, oh, we should deal with this now. Like, you could see how she absolutely didn't see any harm in what she was doing, just that it was helpful to her. And I thought that was very real to life too, because we don't really have, I mean, there are people out there, don't get me wrong, but the majority of people aren't, twirling their mustaches and being like, I'm going to make this child miserable. It's just enforcing, what you think is best for them when you're hurting them. And yeah, is another element that I thought was very impressive.
And such a classic trope of the queer experience of like, oh, I just don't want things to be harder for you, like coming from a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know. I think it's much harder to not live as yourself than to deal with, discrimination in the world. Forcing Lore to wear the dress is one of the most upsetting parts, where Lore is just like physically trying to stop from leaving in this dress because they know like what is going to happen next. The parade in front of friends, and just deeply upsetting. Lots of tears on my end.
That was another element that I was happy for the podcast, that watching Pauline in this back to back. Pauline is a series of tragedies, ending in victory, and this is a series of victories ending in tragedy. So I thought that was interesting companionship between the two pieces.
Yeah, as I said, I think it makes an excellent companion piece. I'm glad I watched Pauline after, because it was the happy ending or happier ending, certainly. I wanted to point out, I loved, going back to the sibling relationship just briefly, the portrait scene. It's the main poster for the movie as well, of Mikkel/Lore in front of this gorgeous aqua wallpaper, floral wallpaper, in like one of their tank tops, and beautiful shot, one of my favorite shots of the film. But then it's their sister making this, child's portrait of her sibling, and I think it's a beautiful encapsulation of the film, because it's these very heavy themes, but they are also ultimately children, and it's children going through this. So it's beautiful,
Yeah.
but it's also not. I think the film doesn't take itself too seriously. Like this is a movie that could easily just revel in its, drama and artistic prowess, and it doesn't. It just feels like it's there. Like you were talking about, what is apparently her signature, the naturalistic lighting and like really simple kind of capturing of these kids. And yeah, I love that scene. I love best sibling relationship of all time? Question mark?
Yeah, I feel it. I guess I should clarify. I mean, I don't want to inform your expectations too much, but there certainly are levels to what she achieves. Like, there's definitely a meticulousness once we get to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but just the look of this was like, okay, this is what I wanted. Last week I didn't feel like I was near the Céline Sciamma that I thought I knew, and this week I certainly did. So
interesting. I'm so excited to see more.
Yeah. This is just incredible.
Yeah, this one's gonna stick with me for a long time, and I'm gonna be telling everybody about it. I'm gonna be telling everybody to watch this.
Yeah.
This, if I ever need to cry, I know what movie to watch. It's this one. I think the last thing I'll say is I did like that Mikkel stores their Play-Doh penis in with the baby teeth. I thought that was some cool symbolism there. Yeah, a good storage, just pieces of them, past and present.
Yeah, steps along the way to becoming an adult.
Yeah, beautiful, simple, but beautiful. And I liked that we didn't really talk about the parents. I guess briefly talk about the parents.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
can go for it. You're good.
Yeah, it's 82 minutes, such a short movie. But yeah, I thought the parents' relationship was interesting. I did think at the beginning that they were divorced because it seemed like the dad, I think it's the dad, comes in with Lore to this new house. And I got the vibe of like, okay, this is dad's new house now that he's split from mom. But no, then the mom shows up with Jean, and the family is reunited, and the mother is pregnant. We've also not pregnant with a son,
Right?
Which I think is, an intentional choice as well. And I think I do excuse a tiny fraction of her actions because, if you're that pregnant, your hormones are crazy. But no, she sucks. She sucks. I hate her. From there, we don't get a ton more of the parents' relationship. I guess I'm wondering, do you think that the parents had a good marriage? Like, was it a healthy relationship?
Yeah, I think there's one really interesting moment that we haven't discussed that clued me into a lot of it. So after the mom has started going off on Mikkel, but I don't think
it's before.
Okay, it's before the dress.
It's before she takes. Yes. So yes, the scene with the dad.
The dad sits down, and I thought that was a very interesting moment. He tries to maintain the peace essentially, and he clearly doesn't fully agree with the way that his wife has handled this, but also is balancing something that I'm sure all parents struggle to balance, where, you may disagree with your spouse, but ultimately you don't want to pick a side between them and the kid. You want to defend them, but you also want to love your child. Anyway, so I'm not saying he handled it right necessarily, but I do think that moment tells me that they're healthy, that he, has disagreements, but is ultimately on the same team as his wife and is trying to
the team of sucking.
Well, unfortunately in this case, but he's, trying to love his child the best he can while still not, driving a wedge between him and his wife. So yeah, I thought that was, yet another very interesting element to the film, that it was showing how you can be trying to really do the right thing and it can still cause pain. But I don't know, like, would it have been the right decision to totally throw his wife under the bus, or how do you even handle that? Yeah. Anyway, so
you divorce her, and take your child away and let them live how they want to live.
There you go.
Because yeah, we also got a brief scene with Mikkel and their dad playing a card game, and it was so, like, clearly they have a good relationship.
Right.
And we don't see anything but conflict pretty much with the mother. And of course, of course someone who's exploring an identity that is more masculine, at the very least, would gravitate toward their father versus their mother, who is the embodiment of femininity, especially a pregnant mother. It's like, yeah, it really makes sense. And I do, I can, even though, as I've said, the mother sucks, I do see her side of it.
Right.
And I see why the dad would kind of defer to her, because it's hard enough living as a woman already, but then to add, whatever gender non-conforming stuff is happening with Lore to that. Yeah, I would defer to my wife as well if I were this father. Probably, but they do suck. Yeah. And I think, it's the adult practicality versus, with Jean representing the childlike wonder of it all, of just kind of going with the flow of things, and not yet inundated with, what is right, what in society, what is the proper thing to do in society. I just love the contrast between the parents and their younger daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, they leave the dress. I did like that they leave.
Yes,
the dress.
It's gone forever.
It's gone forever, leaving girlhood behind. Maybe, perhaps.
And would you recommend the film?
Yeah. Wholeheartedly. One of my very favorites that we've watched so far, in the history of this podcast.
Yeah, which we are at half a year, not quite, but getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. Our fourth director, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I would recommend this to anyone, because as we've said, I do think it has a universality to it, but especially, I think this is peak queer cinema. So if you're into queer cinema at all, and you haven't seen this, it's less than 90 minutes. Give it a watch. Support Criterion Channel. I was very hesitant to subscribe at first, and I'm excited looking through the catalog. This is not sponsored. Sponsor us, Criterion. Yeah, I absolutely watch it. Would you recommend the film?
Yeah, this truly, I was absolutely blown away. This is, it wasn't much of a rule break. There's not the strictest rules here, but yeah, Annie and I do try to mostly not discuss beforehand too much, so that you get kind of the raw discussion here. We're doing it for the listeners.
Unfiltered.
Yeah.
Except for all the curse words that Ryan takes out in editing. Just kidding.
I did go ahead and post on my story in the middle of the week, or the Retrosyn story, that this was one to track down, because I know that a lot of our listeners haven't seen it. I know a lot of people just haven't seen it. This is absolutely a hidden gem, though. This is something to really make time for, and not that you have to make much time for it, but yeah, cut 80 minutes out of your life and see this thing. It is truly incredible. I will also be throwing it at my friends and hoping they give it a watch, because I was absolutely blown away by this film.
Yeah, yay! And next week we get to continue with Céline Sciamma. Now, the stakes are high, because I liked this one so much. Do I remember what the next film is? No.
It's Girlhood, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, great. In the meantime, before we see you next time, hear you? We don't hear you. I'm going to rephrase all of this.
Okay, starting over.
In the meantime, you can follow us on so many platforms. We've got an Instagram and a TikTok. Both can be found under the handle retro_sin. TikTok, we do movie reviews of current films out in theaters. Ryan is about to post a big ol' post.
I was in Florida last week. That's why my sound quality was rough. Well, I guess the reason was that I didn't take my mic. It wasn't that Florida is just inherently a dead zone or something.
A worse audio.
But I managed, but I did manage to see a lot over the last week, and I haven't got to post anything. So my choices were to just bombard the channel or to try to really make a rapid fire as video with squeezing as much as I can. So I think I'm going to do that, and hopefully it's posted by the time you're hearing this.
Yay. Yeah, I got to go see Hamnet, Sentimental Value. You can also see what we're watching by looking at our Letterboxd. I'm there at Annie Morell.
And I'm also there at Ryan Loves Film. We have an email that continues to, I think I clicked it and a spider crawled out where we're really, that place is barren. It's retrospectivecinemapodcast@gmail.com. We did recently just get a comment way back on we need to talk about Kevin. So our third episode, which was good to see. It was, he wasn't totally happy with our discussion, but I was happy to see his opinion on our discussion. So I stand by everything we said in that podcast. I'm sorry, Mr.
I don't think we're too mean.
I think we were pretty fair on that film, but yes, to answer his question, we were a little nitpicky, but it's because the material was so serious, and I thought it was at odds with the material. Anyway, go listen to episode 3. We were young and naive, apparently.
Just babies with hot opinions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel we were negative about that film, but I don't remember being as harsh as he said we were. But maybe I need to give it a listen. Who says?
I do think that's our harshest review of something that's not terribly bad. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I thought it was pretty bad though, so I don't know.
Bonus episode next week. We re-review. We need to talk about Kevin, and we hate it even more. Tune in.
I'm gonna need to be sponsored for that episode in order to watch that movie again. I'm gonna be honest. I need money.
Anyway, next week is Girlhood. At least that's the American title. I think it has a different French title. Do you know it, Annie?
No.
Damn.
Of course not. Bande de Filles. Bande de Filles.
Band of Girls. Okay, there you go. We're both very excited moving forward because this was incredible, and I know where we're eventually heading. But this one I have not seen. Annie has not seen. So come join us. Make sure you see it. And write to us no matter whether you agreed, disagreed, or just want to say hi. Who knows? We're here for you. And until next time, are you taking this time? I think I've had it a few times in a row. You can go for it.
Oh wow. See, it's only because we're on a lady director.
Yeah.
I
feel like sorry, I talked over you after this.
How dare you? Mary watching. You know what? It's December.
Oh, okay.
We're going Mary watching.
Mm-hmm.